All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the February 2022 Argo CD and Rollouts community meeting. I'm your host for today, Jesse Sun, and I am a maintainer and lead of the Argo project. So today we'll be covering the upcoming Argo CD 2.3 release, as well as the upcoming Argo Rollouts 1.2 release. And just a reminder that the Argo project adheres to the CNCF Code of Conduct, so please be courteous and respectful to each other. And also a reminder that this meeting is being recorded and is uploaded to YouTube after. All right, and if you haven't already, please use the link in the meeting to add yourself as an attendee so we can kind of keep track who's joining. Alex, do you want to go first?
Muted? Yes, yeah, I can start. All right, let me share my screen. I have a small presentation for today. And can you please confirm, Jesse, it's visible?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And all right, so my name is Alex. I'm a software engineer at Intuit, and I'm also a maintainer of Argo. And my biggest focus is Argo CD currently. And today I'm going to give you a short update about upcoming 2.3 Argo CD release. And yeah, so some statistics for that release. Basically, we've been working on it for last 3 months. And during the time, 71 contributor pushed 200 plus commits into Argo CD repository, which is quite impressive. So starting, I think, mid of last year, we are following 3 months release cadence. So basically, the conclusion is that we are releasing a new set of features, no matter what, every 3 months. And in that release, we've got kind of contributed and polished 32 enhancements and 67 bug fixes. And we didn't just work on minor improvements. We also have 4 major features. And I'm going to cover those 4 major features shortly. And the current status is right now we have a first release candidate ready, and next release candidate is coming shortly because we do have some bugs. So upgrade this, carefully if you want to give it a try. But we pretty much done with most of bug fixes, and a high chance that next release candidate will be GA. And so it's not the hard promise, but very likely by the end of next week, 2.3 will be ready for general use. Okay, and then let's start with the features that are coming in the new release. And so first, I want to talk about a new syncing strategy that's available in 2.3 release. And I want to start from the problem statement first. So actually on that screen, you are seeing a very common example that happens when people migrate from fixed replica set in your Git to HPA. And HPA, you probably know, it's a horizontal pod autoscaler that's supposed to manage replicas based on load. And so if you use Argo CD, and if you're in that situation where you have your replicas in Git, plus you have HPA at the same time, Argo CD will be complaining that your application is in auto-sync state because number of replicas in Git no longer matches to what's in real cluster. And the solution we had so far was diffing customization. Basically, you can configure Argo CD to just ignore replicas field, and it's no longer going to complain. It will just report that application is in sync process, is in a sync status. But the problem is, if you try to sync that application, Argo CD would still apply the whole file from Git, and basically it would temporarily reset number of replicas back to what it was in Git, and then HPA would revert it back to the required value. So, and you might have a downtime in production. And yeah, this is so next screenshot is kind of demonstrating how you can improve the diffing. And in 2.3 release, you now can solve the syncing problem. So this, hopefully it's visible on my screen. So we've introduced a new sync policy, sorry, new sync option called respect ignore differences. And what it does, basically its kind of name is self-explanatory. it literally tells Argo CD that it should not touch fields which are ignored during the diffing process. And so, that it works kind of straightforward. If you sync application which is in out of sync state, in this case, replicas are in out of sync state, Argo CD just won't touch replicas at all, and you will not get any downtime. So, and that is, we are very excited about that feature because it's been requested for like a year at least, and I think it was the second top most popular feature request in Argo CD, and it's finally available in 2.3. And we have a whole blog kind of dedicated just for this feature and for one more feature which I'm going to cover shortly. So use that link to learn about how it's implemented and how it works in details. All right, and so while we were working on this new syncing strategy, we also realized that we can make ignore custom diffing functionality even more convenient. And so let me switch quickly back to my previous slide. So in this example, you are seeing that the user to use that feature, you would have to configure all the fields you want to ignore one by one. And so in real life, you might want to ignore more than just replicas of deployment. If you use rollout, you will get the exact same issue with rollouts and so on. So, and it's kind of annoying that you need to come up with a list of those pointers for every field, and it's kind of easy to make a mistake. And we realized that we can leverage metadata that Kubernetes maintain for every managed field in a Kubernetes cluster. And if you don't know that, I'm talking about managed fields metadata. So every time a controller inside of Kubernetes make a change, Kubernetes would record which controller modified which field in a managed fields. Sorry for repeating field so often, but basically, the managed fields would have information about which controllers are responsible for which changes, and so what it let us do is you can tell to Argo CD that you just trust one particular controller, and you want to ignore all the changes that were introduced by that controller. So, and to make it a little bit more clear, the real life example is you probably want to trust rollout and deployment controller, and no matter what changes they do, you just want to ignore them because those controllers, you can consider them kind of a system level controllers. And so instead of listing all the fields that are touched by those controllers, you can simply use the new configuration available under ignore difference setting. It's called, basically it's just list of managers that you trust. And if you put list of managers you want to have in that list, then Argo CD will just respect all the changes done by those managers and won't report them as a difference. And you can use this new feature in combination with the respect ignore diff sync option to also do not touch those affected fields during syncing. All right, hopefully my explanation was not too confusing. And again, you have a blog to really read about how it works and how you can use it in details. Okay, next feature, I hope it's much easier to understand. So we worked a lot in this release on the user interface. And one of the problems we were trying to address was visualization of large applications. And so here you are seeing awesome video of one of those features. So we introduced one of the features we introduced is called compact resource tree. And the idea is that often your application has resources of the same type that has no children. So the example here is replica sets. So for example, replica sets and pods. And usually you kind of don't want to, it's usually all of them have pretty much the same information, and you want to work with them as a single group. And compact resource tree allows you to do exactly that. So you kind of can group resources of the same type that have no children into a single group. And then you can click on that group node and get information about all the grouped resources in more appropriate kind of view in a form of table. And so, yeah, and I hope that illustration kind of, it's a good example of how that feature helps. So let animation play a little bit more. So before the feature is enabled, this application doesn't even fit into a screen. Once feature is enabled, you kind of see everything on pretty small screen. All right, and in addition to that, you can also see that we introduced a zoom feature, so you can zoom in and zoom out. And it's not listed here, but there is even one more interesting feature. You can navigate to a different application right from the application details screen. And so if you have time to test new release candidate, you can play with this UI and learn about this new UI enhancements yourself. Okay, let's move on. So next improvement is, it's not really a feature, but it's again very, we heard a lot about this feature from our users. So basically now starting from 2.3 release, we are publishing ARM image and CLI. And so ARM image is just going to be available on quay.io. So if you have Raspberry Pi, you can just basically use Argo, the same Argo CD URL, and it should work. And CLI, ARM CLIs are also available, and we are going to publish them as a release artifact. And last but not least, we now extended features of Argo CD that are available by default. So you probably heard about two projects that were created at Argo Labs. One of them is Argo CD notifications, and second is application set. So those projects were available as an extension of Argo CD. But the caveat was that you had to install them separately. And during last year, both of those projects matured enough, so we feel it's now appropriate to just include them into default Argo CD installation. And so what that means is if you never used those projects before, you will just get new set of features. And if you're using them already, you need to make some action. Basically, you just, I won't explain exactly what you should do, but long story short, you don't have to do much. You just need to remove two remote customized bases if you use customize to manage Argo CD, or you just need to kubectl apply Argo CD installation manifest once when you upgrade to new release. And if you want to learn more, please check upgrading instructions in Argo CD documentation. And that's it. That's the end of my update. And thank you for listening.
Thank you, Alex. I'm going to open up for any questions people have for this this release to Alex. All right. So now I will go ahead and share the rollouts upcoming rollout 1.2 release. You guys can see my screen.
Sorry. Yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we were supposed to have a release candidate by today. That probably is going to happen later today or tomorrow. There's still one PR that needs to get in before we cut the release. But I'll go ahead and start showing what's actually in the release. The first feature, we actually demoed this, Rohit from Databricks demoed this in December, but really quick, if you use analysis with rollouts, and currently the analysis will gate your deployment. And so if that analysis fails, your deployment will automatically roll back, which is not great if you're trying to still work on that analysis template and you need to try it out before you actually turn it on. And so there's a new feature called dry run, and this can be enabled per metric because we support a regular expression of the metric names that you want to dry run. So maybe you have a whole suite which is stable, but you're introducing a new metric that is you're still working out, and you want to see what would happen if you actually turned it on. And so with this feature, what it'll do is it'll go through your analysis, but if it fails, it won't actually cause your rollout to abort and roll back. So this is the analysis dry run. The second feature that is coming in is we call weighted experiment steps. And if you're unfamiliar with rollouts, there's a feature in rollouts that allow you to kick off experiments as part of the canary steps. The reason that the primary use case for this is when you want to do something that we call baseline versus canary experimentation. What that means is if you're doing a metric analysis on two set of pods, a lot of times it's unfair to compare the canary pod against the production pods, which have been running for weeks on end, because the pods, their cache is all warmed up, and so they have different performance characteristics than the canary, which had just started 5 minutes ago. And so one common practice with canary deployments is that you start something called a baseline in addition to the canary, and they both start at the same time. And that way, when you're doing your metric analysis, you have an apples to apples comparison of two pods that actually started at the same time. And previously, this feature was only available if you were using, or only useful, I should say, if you were using the basic canary. But now what this feature allows you to do is you can start the experiment like you would with a canary, but then specify some canary weights to those two templates. And that way, you can leverage your traffic routing capability like Istio or Linkerd or something to split the weight to those baseline and canary pods. And so you could do something like 5% go to the baseline, another 5 go to the canary, and the rest, which would be 90%, go to your production pods. And so I think we have initial support for Istio with this release, and for the other traffic routers, we'll have to add support to those. All right, next. Let's see. Okay. All right, so this is a little bit of a complex problem, but I'll try to explain the issue. If you use ALB ingress load balancer controller, you may have noticed the behavior of ALB that they inject readiness gates on pods, depending if that pod is reachable by an ALB ingress. And those readiness gates are important because those readiness gates block, or they don't allow a pod to become ready until they are registered to the target group, the underlying target group in AWS. Here's the caveat is that those readiness gates can only get injected if there is a path from the ingress to the service to the pod. And what in practice what that means is they don't like it if you change the selectors of a service like after your pod starts up, because readiness gates can't be modified on a pod once it's already running. Okay, so now I explained the problem. The solution, which under guidance and feedback from the AWS team, is that they suggest that we essentially never modify service selector labels, or at least don't modify them at a point where it's your pod is already running, because otherwise they won't get those readiness gates. And in order to do that with rollouts, we created a new way of modifying service selectors, which we called ping pong service management. And the idea is that you have two services and you're just kind of going back and forth, 100% to ping, and then on the next release, 100% to Pong. And then, so there's no necessary concept of like a stable service and a canary service, because every odd release is the ping and every even service is the Pong. But what this allows us to do is it allows us to modify services at a time where it's before the pods are created. So the ordering would be update the ping service to the new replica set hash, and then scale up the replica sets. And by doing so, we now will get those readiness gates that ALB injects. And then those are important because it helps with the whole zero downtime functionality that readiness gates helps prevent. There is a link to the diagram. I think I covered this in another meeting of describing the problem. And you now have two solutions to this. In the previous release, we had something called target group verification. It was an AWS specific feature, but now we have this other second feature if you want to use, you want to ping and pong back and forth between two services. Okay, that's the kind of the more complex one. Let me know if you have any questions on this. Next, we have a cool feature to retain a customizable number of metrics. And before this, you were stuck at the hardwired version of 10 metrics. But if you're, depending on how frequently you're taking metrics, 10 might be too small, and you need to, like, if you're taking it every minute, that means it's only like 10 minutes of measurements. So this is now configurable that you can set at an analysis template level. I believe you can also set it by inside the rollout, which is calling the analysis template as well. And then lastly, we have a bunch of other features that it's now possible to use multiple traffic routers at the same time. So maybe you're transitioning between Istio or and some other, or Nginx to Istio, or you just have a use case where you actually use both at the same time. You can Rollout will update both the Istio virtual service as well as the Nginx ingress, and you can have both, multiple. If you're using the web metric, it was previously only possible to do GET requests, but if you have a need to post something with a body or put something with a body, you can now do that with the web metric. Some metric providers, I think that Prometheus one has been improved to add more metadata about like the I think this is like what is actually returned, or the query, I think, that is actually formulated. It will be recorded so that you understand the exact query filled out with the template parameters, so that if you need to debug the query that caused your rollout to fail. We have HA support now, so this means you can scale up the rollout controller. It's active passive, so it's a standby in case the leader is not responding and updating the Kubernetes release. You do need, if you're running Kubernetes 1.23, you will need this release because this is the first Kubernetes release that dropped support for the extensions ingress group, and so 1.2 will now exclusively, or actually not exclusively, you will start using the networking v1 API group. And lastly, we have some performance improvements. This was actually covered in the ArgoCon presentation that I did with Salesforce, but essentially you can control some queries per second and burst settings in case your controller, you notice it's needs some tuning. depending on your level scale. And we do have app mesh, which I would like to get into this release. It's currently in review right now, but I hopeful that we will get that one into this release as well. Okay, so that is the Argo Rollouts 1.2 release, and I'll stop for any questions that people have.
Thank you. I had one question that not sure if you covered it in presentation, but do you know what is the approximate release date? Do you plan 1.2 in next week?
So we should have had the 1.2 release candidate like today, but that got caught up on. We're still trying to get important PR into that. Typically, we let the RC run, as you know, like Intuit will want to run that internally, see if it causes any issues in some of the pre-prod environments. But also, I'd like for the community to at least get their hands on this as well. So I would say another 2 weeks before the GA is officially available.
Thank you.
All right. Did we have any other business or after topics or agenda items that people wanted to add to today's agenda? Okay. If there's nothing else, I think we'll end a bit early today. If you have any other discussion topics, please feel free to add them to the agenda for next month. Or if you have actually any features you've been working on and want to present, or integrations with any of the CD or rollouts projects, those are also very welcome to present in this forum.
Thanks, Jesse. Great work, great presentation.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, bye everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.